Imagine a video game that can make you pause mid-play, your heart caught in a tug-of-war between strategy and emotion. A game where tiny, colorful creatures you guide across alien landscapes can feel as fragile as soldiers on a battlefield. This isn't a hyperbolic comparison. It's exactly how Shigeru Miyamoto describes Pikmin. To him, leading a squad of Pikmin through the dangers of PNF 404 can evoke the same gut-wrenching tension as watching soldiers march across war-torn France in Saving Private Ryan. Each decision carries weight, each loss stings, and every small victory is a testament to patience, cunning, and care. At first glance, it's easy to dismiss Pikmin as a charming strategy game, but beneath the bright colors and whimsical sounds lies a design philosophy rooted in emotion, challenge, and reflection. Miyamoto wants players to confront ethical choices, not through lectures or forced narratives, but through the quiet, persistent trials of the game world itself. It's a world where the act of saving a single life, whether human or Pikmin, can resonate far beyond the screen. Before Pikmin 3 even reached players' hands, it had already undergone years of careful planning, trial, and evolution. Around 30% of the ideas Miyamoto's team brainstormed never made it into the final game. Ambitious concepts like an online versus mode or a fourth playable character, codenamed D, were abandoned because they demanded sacrifices elsewhere. Even originally planned captains like Olar were cut from the initial release, only to return years later in Pikmin 3 Deluxe alongside Lou in side stories. Miyamoto's philosophy was simple but challenging. Focus on what's fun, meaningful, and manageable. The game was designed to emphasize single-player exploration and local multiplayer, leaving online competition for another day. Behind every choice, from which captains to include to which game modes survive development, lies a balance between ambition and practicality. For Miyamoto, every decision is a lesson in restraint, shaping not only the gameplay but also the emotional experiences that define the series. Shigeru Miyamoto has always approached game design as a form of storytelling without words, and Pikmin 3 is no exception. He often frames the game in a way that reveals its emotional stakes, comparing a player guiding Pikmin across PNF 404 at sunset to the journey of soldiers in Saving Private Ryan. In the film, a general sends his squad across perilous territory to save a single man, aware that some may not survive. In Pikmin, each lost Pikmin evokes a similar sense of responsibility. The weight of decision-making is palpable, and every action carries consequences. Miyamoto emphasizes that the game doesn't dictate moral judgments. Instead, it invites players to wrestle with them personally, making victories and losses resonate on an emotional level. Miyamoto's past work on the F-Zero series also left a clear mark on Pikmin 3. The precision and competitive thrill of racing against the clock, pursuing the perfect score, and mastering tracks over and over again translate into Pikmin's mission-based gameplay. Especially in mission mode, replaying levels to optimize strategy, timing, and efficiency mirrors the satisfaction of shaving seconds off a lap in F-Zero. Even the subtle tension of leading tiny creatures across a hostile alien landscape carries echoes of the exacting, high-stakes energy found in his racing games. Not all ideas conceived for Pikmin 3 made it into the final product. Online multiplayer, for instance, was considered early on but ultimately scrapped to preserve the quality of the single-player and local multiplayer experiences. Similarly, a fourth captain, codenamed D in concept art, was cut to streamline gameplay. Originally, there were plans to include 4 captains in total, including Olar, but switching between them proved too complex and disrupted the game's flow. Olar would eventually return in Pikmin 3 Deluxe, alongside Lou, in side stories that expanded the world without overcomplicating the core experience. These development choices reflect Miyamoto's philosophy. Focus on creating a polished, emotionally engaging game, rather than stretching resources thin, chasing features that don't fully serve the experience. The long road to Pikmin 3 also explains why Pikmin 4 has taken so long to materialize. After the modest commercial performance of the first 2 games, a third installment was not a guaranteed priority. Miyamoto has explained that project teams must constantly juggle multiple priorities, making it difficult to allocate resources to a sequel until earlier games prove viable. Pikmin 3 itself evolved over 5 years with a small, dedicated team experimenting with new ideas, which suggests that Pikmin 4 may still be in the early, exploratory phase of development. Miyamoto remains hopeful that future hardware improvements or strong sales of Pikmin 3 Deluxe could reignite interest and allow the series to grow further. Ultimately, Pikmin 3 exemplifies Miyamoto's vision of gaming as a delicate blend of strategy, storytelling, and emotional engagement. It challenges players not just to think critically, but to care deeply, to feel a connection to the tiny, fragile creatures under their command, and to weigh their decisions carefully. It's a game that quietly teaches empathy and responsibility, all while offering the thrill of discovery, strategy, and mastery, a hallmark of Miyamoto's enduring design philosophy. The creation of the original Kid Icarus is a story of remarkable ambition and relentless determination. Toru Osawa, a young and relatively unknown developer at Nintendo, pitched the idea for a brand new action game. Despite his inexperience, the company saw the potential in his proposal and greenlit the project. Yet what began as a promising opportunity quickly turned into a grueling test of endurance and ingenuity. Osawa found himself largely on his own, crafting both the design document and the game's sprites almost entirely by himself. His dedication was so extreme that when fellow designer Yoshio Sakamoto returned from vacation, he discovered Osawa working through the summer months without proper support. Recognizing the project was at risk of missing its December deadline, Sakamoto brought in the Metroid team, who were already familiar with the engine used in Kid Icarus, providing much-needed expertise to finish the title on time. The development process was nothing short of brutal. Staff pulled around-the-clock shifts, sometimes sleeping on cardboard boxes within the office. To conserve energy, the building's heating was turned off at night, making the autumn chill particularly unforgiving. Even Osawa's honeymoon was interrupted, as he was called back to work on the second day. Despite submitting the game just 3 days before its release, unfinished in his own eyes, the project went forward, a testament to both the urgency and pressure that defined early Nintendo development cycles. The game later received additional polish for the North American release, including colored backgrounds and cutscenes and a staff role, and even a unique fifth ending where the hero Pit is kissed by the goddess Palutena. Both the Japanese and Western versions retained 4 basic endings, reflecting the player's performance, from a humble farmer to a fully formed angel. Technical differences, like the Famicom Disk System's 3 save slots versus the NES password system, highlighted regional contrasts and innovations. Hidden features, such as haggling with shopkeepers, also showcased Nintendo's early experimentation with interactive mechanics. Osawa's personal interests deeply influenced Kid Icarus. Greek mythology inspired the setting and enemies, while the game's quirky creatures, like the eggplant wizard, drew from his love of unusual and humorous design. Even certain enemies foreshadowed the Metroid series, such as the K enemies, whose name came from Koroido, meaning Metroid Child. These small yet thoughtful touches cemented the game as a blend of classical myth, personal creativity, and early Nintendo eccentricity. Kid Icarus would spawn a sequel, Myths and Monsters, which reached North America and Europe in 1991, though Japan had to wait until 2012 to experience it on the 3DS Virtual Console. Later revival attempts, like Factor 5's 2007 reimagining and the eventual transformation into Kid Icarus, Uprising, highlight the series' enduring allure. Sakurai, taking the helm for the 3DS, embraced the series' signature elements, difficulty, music, and whimsical world-building, while introducing modernized gameplay, including dynamic air-to-ground battles, fully scripted narratives, and references to the series' legacy. Kid Icarus. Uprising became a celebration of the franchise's history, filled with hidden nods, Easter eggs, and lore-rich details, bridging decades of design philosophy. From Osawa's solitary labor to Sakurai's innovative handheld revival, the series embodies both the challenges and the creative heights of Nintendo's legacy, blending technical ingenuity with emotional storytelling in ways that continue to inspire players decades later. The F-Zero series is a story of lightning-fast ambition. The original F-Zero was developed in just 15 months to serve as a launch title for the Super Nintendo, showcasing the system's revolutionary Mode 7 pseudo 3D graphics. The game's tight schedule forced the team to work with laser focus, but it paid off. F-Zero became an iconic example of speed, precision, and futuristic design. A direct sequel was planned for the Super Nintendo, but commercial shifts and changing priorities meant it never reached global audiences. However, Japan received BSF-Zero Grand Prix via the Satellaview add-on, offering new tracks, fresh vehicles, and expanded gameplay, including 4 new racers like the Blue Thunder and Fire Scorpion. Its follow-up, BSF-Zero Grand Prix 2, continued the trend with additional courses and competitive features. Several F-Zero titles never made it outside Japan. A Nintendo 64 disk drive expansion for F-Zero X included a track editor, a vehicle creator, and stereo sound upgrades. Though the hardware never saw a Western release, hints of these projects survive in the game's data, like the Super Falcon vehicle, accessible only through cheat devices. Another project, Zero Racers for the Virtual Boy, aimed to bring F-Zero into a 3-circuit, 5-track format with 4 vehicles, including the new Origami. But the failure of the Virtual Boy ended that venture prematurely. F-Zero GX and its data-rich archives reveal the depth of the series' creative experimentation. Unused tracks, test cones, detailed memory card models, and hidden vehicles hint at the developer's relentless pursuit of perfection. Even aesthetic choices like renaming venues or characters for international audiences, Mighty Gazelle became MM Gazelle, and Blood Falcon's vehicle shifted from Hellhawk to Bloodhawk, reflect Nintendo's attention to cultural sensitivities while preserving the game's core thrill. The franchise also contains playful nods to other Nintendo worlds. James McCloud, a character in F-Zero, echoes Fox McCloud's father from Star Fox, bridging the sci-fi racing universe with Nintendo's broader narrative tapestry. Mr. EAD, with his iconic mustache and Starman belt, nods to Nintendo's own development division, EAD. Vehicles and characters occasionally appear across franchises, from Super Mario RPG to Star Fox Command, emphasizing a shared universe that rewards observant players. References to other developers also appear. F-Zero GX, developed by Sega-owned Amusement Vision, includes subtle tributes to Sega franchises. Eggman's glasses, the Hulk-inspired belt, and hints of Crazy Taxi. Even the track mechanics once believed to be piloted by Chow reveal a deeper layer of hidden design, showing Nintendo and its partners' penchant for intricate Easter eggs and playful storytelling. From its rapid launch origins to secret Japanese-only projects, F-Zero embodies both ambition and experimentation. The series not only pushed the limits of hardware and gameplay mechanics, but also forged a network of cross-franchise storytelling and hidden treasures that continue to captivate dedicated fans and speedrunning communities. In the 1980s, while Nintendo consoles were already reaching international audiences, China presented an entirely different challenge. Official consoles were rare, prohibitively expensive, and mostly entered via Hong Kong imports. For many Chinese players, their first experience with Nintendo came through one of countless Famicom knockoffs. Among the most popular was the Subor system, also called the Red and White Machine, so ubiquitous that even Jackie Chan endorsed its Little Tyrant line, a series of educational keyboards designed to teach programming while doubling as Famicom clones. By the 1990s, Subor dominated roughly 80% of the Chinese market, earning billions of yuan. But the government cracked down, passing legislation in 2000 that restricted the manufacture and sale of game consoles. The ruling inadvertently sparked a surge in PC gaming while forcing companies like Nintendo to innovate. Nintendo's solution was bold. A joint venture with Chinese-American developer Wei Yen formed iQ Limited. Instead of a traditional console, they created the iQ Player in 2003, a handheld system with all hardware built into the controller, connecting directly to a TV. This clever workaround allowed Nintendo to bypass the console ban, while offering a portable N64 experience at an accessible price. around $72. The IQ player came preloaded with titles like Dr. Mario 64 and included demos for Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Games were purchased via rewritable memory cards at IQ kiosks, or later online through IQ Atome. Though the library was small, just 14 releases, it spanned popular hits and niche favorites, and the device included innovative features such as multiplayer through a family package and quicker load times for speedrunners. Nintendo repeated this approach with IQ versions of the Game Boy Advance, DS, and 3DS XL. Yet each iteration faced challenges: limited software, high prices, and a complex regulatory environment. The IQ 3DS XL, for instance, included only 2 pre-installed games, lacking eShop access, and cost significantly more than the international 3DS XL. Even after China lifted its console ban in 2014, Nintendo's path remained cautious. Rather than release existing hardware like the Wii U, they opted to design new solutions tailored to Chinese consumers. Collaborations with NVIDIA allowed players to experience Wii classics like Super Mario Galaxy and The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess via the NVIDIA Shield, running in 1080p with optimized performance. While sales were modest, less than 23,000 copies combined, it demonstrated Nintendo's commitment to the market. Today, IQ Limited serves as Nintendo's official subsidiary handling localization and development for Chinese audiences, and partnerships with companies like Tencent continue to open doors. China remains a complex, high-stakes market, but Nintendo's creative approaches, from hardware innovations to clever software distribution, showcase the company's relentless adaptability in the face of regulatory and economic hurdles. Long before the global recognition of Fire Emblem, Nintendo was experimenting with ambitious projects that never saw the light of day. One such title, Fire Emblem 64, was in development for the Nintendo 64 disk drive. Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed that the game was progressing and expected to follow Mario RPG 2, targeting a 1998 release. Yet, the disk drive's commercial struggles and shifting priorities ultimately doomed the project. Around the same period, Intelligent Systems founder Shuzo Kaga left the company to start his own studio, Taion. Their first project, initially called Emblem Saga, was intended as a spiritual successor to Fire Emblem. Legal concerns forced a title change to Tearing Saga, leaving remnants of Fire Emblem assets unused yet lingering in the game's code. Speculation has persisted that the cancellations of Fire Emblem 64 and Tearing Saga are linked, reflecting the complex interplay of intellectual property, market timing, and corporate strategy. Meanwhile, the series' introduction to Western audiences unfolded differently. While many credit Marth's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee for igniting interest abroad, the success of Advance Wars played a pivotal role, demonstrating Western appetite for strategy games. This influence shaped the first Western Fire Emblem release on the Game Boy Advance, which was actually the 7th game in the series. Western versions often featured modifications to accommodate new players, including adjusted character growth rates, stat changes, and the introduction of easy modes, changes intended to make the games more accessible without alienating veterans. Throughout these shifts, Intelligent Systems navigated delicate balancing acts, honoring deep-rooted Japanese lore, ensuring gameplay challenges were approachable for international audiences, and experimenting with features like casual mode in later titles. Fire Emblem Awakening, for example, incorporated downloadable content, marriage mechanics, and a player avatar while reinstating casual mode. A contentious decision internally, but critical for revitalizing the series amid declining sales. Even the series' narrative reflected careful cultural and historical layering. Names, locations, and characters drew from Roman, Norse, and Celtic mythologies, creating intricate worlds where every element, from planetary references to subtle font choices, was deliberate. These touches persisted in later games, connecting ancient mythologies with modern gameplay experiences, and ensuring each title felt both expansive and deeply rooted in lore. Beyond gameplay and mechanics, Fire Emblem games are a treasure trove of hidden details and mythological resonance. Path of Radiance on the GameCube, for example, contains leftover icons and art assets from earlier titles like Genealogy of the Holy War and Blazing Sword, tucked away in the game's code. Though they aren't used in the final gameplay, these remnants reveal a silent dialogue with the series' history, a nod to the developers' reverence for their own legacy. Language and lore are woven with similar care. In both Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, certain characters speak in an ancient tongue, represented by a distinct font in English. This choice reinforces a sense of depth and mystery, offering players an immersive cultural layer, even without knowing the language itself. Intricate textual elements also appear in menus, with hidden messages like, "Doubt that the stars are fire," "Doubt that the sun does not move," "Doubt truth to be a liar," but never doubt I love, drawn directly from Hamlet. Shakespeare's poetry thus finds its way into the game world, blending classical literature with fantastical storytelling. The series' mythology is equally elaborate. Continents like Urcha and Yugra are steeped in real-world influences. Urcha nods to Mars, the Roman god of war, while Yugra evokes Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. Characters and locations frequently draw from Norse and Celtic myths, creating a tapestry of legend that supports the narrative's political intrigue, heroism, and tragedy. Even gameplay choices, permanent death, growth rates, and skill progression serve as extensions of these mythic structures, giving each battle weight beyond simple strategy. Fire Emblem's attention to narrative detail extends to hidden or cut content as well. Entire characters, dialogue options, and cross-game linking features often remain buried in the code, revealing a parallel history of what could have been. In Radiant Dawn, unused character stats, artwork, and storylines hint at expansive stories that never fully reach players, preserving a sense of lost potential and the developer's ongoing ambition. In essence, Fire Emblem is more than a tactical strategy game. Its hidden layers, mythological references, and literary touches transform each title into a multi-dimensional experience. Every decision, every dialogue font, and even unused assets contribute to a world that feels lived in, meticulously crafted and historically resonant, rewarding players who look beyond the surface. While Nintendo consoles made their way to China in the 1980s, they were often expensive imports, leaving many players to encounter the world of Nintendo through bootleg systems. Among the most popular was the Subor console, also known as the Red and White Machine, which brought Famicom and Super Famicom games to Chinese households at a fraction of the cost. This proliferation of clones was so widespread that even Jackie Chan endorsed a version, marketing it as the Little Tyrant, a line of computer keyboards that doubled as Famicom systems to teach children programming while delivering a gaming experience. Despite their ingenuity, these systems face scrutiny. The Chinese government, concerned about the influence of video games on youth, passed a law in 2000 halting the manufacture, sale, and import of gaming consoles. This move redirected many gamers to PCs, but a vibrant black market kept unlicensed Famicom-style games alive for years, producing titles like an 8-bit Final Fantasy VII and a Harry Potter remake. Nintendo, refusing to exit China entirely, found a creative workaround. In 2003, they partnered with Chinese-American developer Wei Yen to create iQue Limited and release the iQue Player. Marketed as a handheld plug-and-play device, the iQue Player contained all its hardware within the controller and connected directly to televisions, skirting the console ban. It offered classics like Dr. Mario 64 and demo versions of Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, which could be purchased via a memory card system for just a few dollars. This inventive approach allowed Nintendo to reach players inland who could not afford expensive imports. The iQue Player's library remains small, with only 14 games officially released. yet the system provided multiplayer options through its family package and even facilitated online purchases. Later, IQ-branded versions of the Game Boy Advance, DS, and 3DS entered the market, though these devices struggled due to limited game availability and high prices. For instance, the IQ 3DS XL, which came with just Mario Kart 7 and Super Mario 3D Land, sold for roughly $270, higher than its Hong Kong counterpart with a full library and eShop access. Nintendo's persistence finally bore fruit in 2014 when China lifted its console ban. While Sony and Microsoft hesitated, Nintendo forged a partnership with Tencent to release the Switch, accompanied by localized titles like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Shuntaro Furukawa, Nintendo's president, admitted that China's market presented unique challenges, requiring long-term strategies, consumer-focused value, and government cooperation. The plan wasn't immediate domination, but careful, sustained growth, a steady march into a vast, untapped gaming frontier. Nintendo's ambitions for Fire Emblem on the Nintendo 64 were substantial. Work on Fire Emblem 64 began under Shigeru Miyamoto's guidance, with the game originally slated to follow Mario RPG 2 in 1998. By August 2000, however, the project was quietly canceled, replaced in public listings by a new title, Fire Emblem Maiden of Darkness, later released as Fire Emblem The Sword of Seals. While it remains unclear whether assets from Fire Emblem 64 carried over, there's evidence suggesting that elements of the canceled project influenced later GameCube titles like Path of Radiance. The story of Fire Emblem's Western arrival is equally fascinating. While many credit Super Smash Bros. Melee for sparking Western interest in the series, the success of Advance Wars also played a pivotal role. Its strategy-based gameplay demonstrated to Nintendo that Western audiences were receptive to tactical games, paving the way for Fire Emblem releases abroad. The first Western release, a Game Boy Advance title, was actually the 7th installment in the series, signaling a shift toward making the games more accessible outside Japan. Localization went beyond mere translation. Western releases often adjust to difficulty. Story prologues like Lin's tutorial from Sword of Seals became mandatory. Enemy stats were tweaked, and future installments introduced new difficulty modes or modified existing ones to balance challenge and accessibility. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn offered complex font designs and languages for certain characters, giving depth to their dialogue while keeping translations clear. Hidden content, unused characters like Heather, and legacy icons from earlier games remain tucked in the data, hinting at the franchise's rich history. During the challenging development of Fire Emblem Awakening, the inclusion of casual mode, a feature that removed permanent character death, sparked internal debate. Faced with declining sales and the potential for the series to end, developers opted to add features like a player avatar, DLC, marriage and children systems, and casual mode to broaden appeal. These decisions paid off, with Awakening becoming one of the best-selling titles in the franchise. Fire Emblem's storytelling drew heavily on mythology, history, and geography. Characters and regions often referenced Roman, Norse, and Celtic traditions. For instance, the continent of Urcha is inspired by Mars, the god of war, while Yugra's design and characters borrow from Norse myths. Even seemingly minor elements like dialogue fonts or background designs carried layers of intentional meaning, showing the series' dedication to detail. The 1996 Fire Emblem anime adaptation introduced Western audiences to Prince Marth long before any game officially did, setting the stage for his later appearances in Super Smash Bros. And cementing the series' cultural footprint. F-Zero's history is one of speed, innovation, and a surprising number of near misses. The original game was developed in just 15 months, a lightning-fast schedule designed to ensure it would showcase the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 Pseudo 3D graphics at launch. Its success sparked immediate plans for a sequel, though many of these follow-ups never reached international audiences. One such sequel, intended for the Super Nintendo, was ultimately canceled, though an unfinished version was polished and released in Japan as BSF-Zero Grand Prix for the Satellaview. This expansion introduced new tracks like Mute City 4 and additional vehicles such as the Blue Thunder, Luna Bomber, Green Amazon, and Fire Scorpion. A second Satellaview expansion followed, adding more tracks and continuing the tradition of experimental content only available to Japanese players. The Game Boy Advance also hosted F-Zero titles with exclusive features. F-Zero GP Legend included an e-reader function in Japan, allowing players to scan cards to unlock characters, tracks, and challenges, though this feature was omitted from Western releases. Meanwhile, F-Zero Climax added new characters, tracks, and a track editor, continuing the series' trend of pushing the boundaries of its hardware. F-Zero also explored several canceled projects. A Virtual Boy title, Zero Racers, was slated for 1996 but never launched, likely due to the system's commercial failure. Similarly, unused tracks, vehicles, and level designs can still be found in F-Zero GX's code, hinting at ambitious plans that never fully materialized. Some of these assets, such as the Ayor track or the Hidden Stage Zero, were placeholders or experimental designs, offering a tantalizing glimpse into what might have been. Beyond racing, F-Zero's universe occasionally intersected with other Nintendo properties. Characters like James McCloud echo the Star Fox lineage, while vehicles such as the Bloodhawk and Fire Stingray made cameo appearances in games like Super Mario RPG and Star Fox Command. Even the arcade-inspired references to Sega's Crazy Taxi or Sonic franchises demonstrate the playful crossovers embedded in F-Zero's DNA. Localization changes also played a role in shaping the series outside Japan. Vehicle and character names were often altered, sometimes to avoid cultural insensitivity, as with the Windwalker pilot, or to align with English adaptations of the F-Zero anime. These adjustments, while subtle, ensured that the high-octane world of F-Zero remained accessible and appealing to global audiences. F-Zero's legacy is thus defined by both its technical daring and the glimpses of lost ideas. The canceled expansions, hidden assets, and fleeting crossovers all testify to a franchise that raced ahead of its time, even when not all its creations made it to players' hands. Nintendo's path into China was anything but straightforward. In the 1980s, official consoles trickled into the country via Hong Kong, but their prices made them a luxury few could afford. Instead, Chinese gamers often experienced Nintendo through a sea of Famicom knockoffs. Among these, the Subor system, also known as Hongbiai Yixins or the Red and White Machine, rose to prominence, commanding an estimated 80% of the market and generating over 1 billion yuan in revenue during the 1990s. These clones were so widespread that celebrity endorsements like Jackie Chan promoting Subor's Little Tyrant educational computers helped legitimize their presence in households. Despite their popularity, the Chinese government eventually cracked down, passing regulations in 2000 that restricted the manufacture and import of video game consoles. This law reshaped the market overnight, pushing gamers toward PCs and fueling a thriving black market for unlicensed Famicom games. Nintendo adapted with ingenuity. Using a legal loophole, they partnered with software developer Veller Way to form iQue Limited and release the iQue Player in 2003. Unlike traditional consoles, the iQue Player was built into the controller and plugged directly into a TV, allowing it to bypass restrictions. The device preloaded classic games like Dr. Mario 64 and demos of Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Gamers could purchase additional titles via rewritable memory cards or, later, online through the iQue Atome service. Despite these innovations, the system had limitations. Only 14 games were officially released, and multiplayer required additional iQue controllers and the family package accessory. The iQue Player didn't achieve massive commercial success, but it carved a niche for collectors and speedrunners thanks to faster text scrolling and load times compared to the original N64. Nintendo tried repeatedly to penetrate the Chinese market with handhelds, from the GBA line to iQue-branded versions of the DS, DS Lite, and DSi. Yet sales remained modest, with only a handful of localized games making it to stores. Even when the 3DS XL was released under the iQue label, its library consisted mainly of pre-installed titles like Mario Kart 7 and Super Mario 3D Land, leaving consumers with limited options. It wasn't until 2014 that China lifted its ban on video game consoles. While competitors hesitated, Nintendo continued experimenting. In a bold move, they partnered with Nvidia to bring Wii classics, Super Mario Galaxy, Twilight Princess, and New Super Mario Bros. Wii to the Shield in 2017, fully optimized in 1080p. Sales were modest compared to global figures, but the effort demonstrated Nintendo's persistence in navigating a complex, highly regulated market. By 2019, the iQue brand had quietly evolved into an official Nintendo subsidiary, focusing on localization and development for the Chinese market. Nintendo's eventual partnership with Tencent signaled a long-term commitment to China, prioritizing steady, sustainable growth over quick profits. Shuntaro Furukawa, Nintendo's president, acknowledged the challenges candidly. Breaking into China required government support, consumer value, and engaging content. Only by meeting all three could Nintendo hope to succeed in the world's largest gaming market. When F-Zero burst onto the Super Nintendo, it did so with barely 15 months of development, a remarkably short window aimed at showcasing the console's groundbreaking Mode 7 graphics from day one. The game's sleek, high-speed aesthetic quickly became a hallmark of the franchise, setting a standard for futuristic racing games. A direct sequel was initially planned for the SNES, but it was canceled. However, Japan received BSF Zero Grand Prix through the Satellaview, adding new tracks like Mute City 4 and introducing 4 new vehicles: Blue Thunder, Luna Bomber, Green Amazon, and Fire Scorpion. A follow-up, BSF Zero Grand Prix 2, added 5 more tracks, expanding the high-octane universe further. Over the years, many F-Zero projects never left Japan. An N64 disk drive expansion for F-Zero. X included a track editor, custom vehicle creator, a new cup, and 3 upgraded vehicles: Super Falcon, Super Stingray, and Super Cat. Meanwhile, F-Zero Climax, a Japan-exclusive GBA sequel, introduced 5 new characters from the F-Zero anime and a robust track editor. Unique features like the e-reader card unlocks, which allowed characters, tracks, and challenges to be accessed, were removed in Western versions, replaced instead by in-game completion rewards. Even the planned Zero Racers for the Virtual Boy, slated for 1996, never materialized. It promised 3 circuits with 5 tracks each and 4 vehicles, including a brand new origami-inspired racer. Its cancellation, likely tied to the Virtual Boy's commercial failure, marked another near miss in the series' experimental history. F-Zero GX is a treasure trove of hidden content. The game's code contains unused tracks, such as a placeholder track named Stage 0, and a cut E3 track recreating F-Zero X's silence. Several vehicles and characters have hidden lore, like Octoman, who later appears as a boss in Star Fox Command, or James McLeod, whose design mirrors the Fox McCloud's father. The game even references Sega franchises. Eggman's glasses appear on Mr. EAD, while Crazy Taxi nods emerge in PJ's vehicle. These intricate Easter eggs underscore the deep cross-pollination of Nintendo's and collaborators' universes. Localization further shaped F-Zero's global identity. Venue names shifted, character names were altered to suit Western audiences, and some culturally sensitive content was adjusted, such as renaming the Windwalker Racer to avoid Native American stereotypes. Despite these changes, the essence of F-Zero's breakneck racing, futuristic spectacle, and quirky humor remained intact. Nintendo's journey in China has been anything but straightforward. In the 1980s, official consoles trickled in from Hong Kong at high prices, leaving many Chinese gamers first exposed to Nintendo through Famicom clones. Among the most prominent was the Subor system, a red and white knockoff that dominated the 1990s market, capturing roughly 80% of Chinese gaming households and earning up to 1 billion yuan in revenue. Even Jackie Chan lent his endorsement, highlighting the system's mainstream appeal. Yet, China's government soon intervened, passing the 2000 Special Operation on Video Game Arcades Law, effectively banning console production and sales. This forced the market to pivot toward PCs, though unlicensed Famicom games continued to circulate through black markets well into the 2000s, including unauthorized adaptations of Harry Potter and Final Fantasy VII. Nintendo responded creatively. Exploiting a legal loophole, the company partnered with software developer Wei Yen to form iQue Limited, circumventing the console ban by marketing devices like the iQue Player, a hybrid plug-and-play system housing all hardware inside the controller itself. Released in 2003 for roughly $72, the iQue Player resembled a handheld N64 and came preloaded with Dr. Mario 64, as well as demo versions of Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, Wave Race 64, and Zelda: Ocarina of Time. To acquire more games, users purchased downloadable content via an iQue memory card at kiosks, or later, online through the iQue Atom service, creating a Chinese analog of Nintendo's Virtual Console. Despite these innovations, sales were modest, and only 14 games were officially released for the iQue Player. Multiplayer experiences, such as Super Smash Bros., required an iQue Family Package adapter to accommodate additional controllers. The final title, Animal Forest, the precursor to Animal Crossing, launched just 5 months before the North American Wii, marking the end of this experimental line. Nintendo attempted to sustain its presence with iQue-branded Game Boy Advance, DS, and 3DS systems. Some devices featured unique hardware adjustments, like the iQue DS's ability to play global DS games despite regional lockouts. Yet these efforts often faltered due to limited game libraries, high prices, and competition from unauthorized alternatives. Even the iQue 3DS XL, priced around $270, included only pre-installed titles like Mario Kart 7 and Super Mario 3D Land, missing eShop access entirely. It wasn't until 2014 that China lifted its console ban, yet Nintendo opted for caution. Instead of releasing the Wii U, the company chose to design new products specifically for Chinese consumers, a strategy guided by price, content, and government alignment. Partnerships with NVIDIA and Tencent later brought select Wii titles to the NVIDIA Shield, allowing games like Super Mario Galaxy and Twilight Princess to reach Chinese players in full HD. Despite the limited sales, roughly 22,761 copies combined, the move demonstrated Nintendo's persistent, inventive efforts to penetrate a challenging market. The Fire Emblem series has a long history of near misses and hidden projects that shaped its evolution. One notable casualty was Fire Emblem 64, intended for the Nintendo 64 disk drive, and planned to follow Mario RPG 2. Development progressed steadily by 1998, yet the project was ultimately canceled, replaced on the radar by Fire Emblem: Maiden of Darkness, which surfaced at Nintendo Space World in 2000. This title later evolved into Fire Emblem: The Sword of Seals. The fate of Fire Emblem the 64 remains murky, though evidence suggests its assets may have influenced later games, such as Path of Radiance for the GameCube. Interestingly, Fire Emblem's Western presence owes as much to strategic exposure as to sheer fan interest. While many assume that Marth's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee sparked Western enthusiasm, the success of Advance Wars' localized strategy gameplay played a pivotal role in demonstrating the appeal of tactical RPGs abroad. Consequently, the first Fire Emblem to reach Western audiences was the Game Boy Advance release, technically the 7th in the Japanese timeline. Adjustments were made to accommodate newcomers. Optional tutorials, reduced enemy difficulty, and smoother progression eased players into the series. Subsequent titles continued this trend. The Sacred Stones tweaked character growth rates and base stats, while Path of Radiance softened mechanics for Western players, removing the notorious Maniac difficulty. Later, Radiant Dawn restored traditional difficulty tiers, though renamed Easy, Normal, and Hard for accessibility. Debates over accessibility persisted into modern entries like Awakening, which introduced casual mode to remove permanent character death, a controversial move among series veterans. This inclusion wasn't arbitrary. It was a strategic safeguard against declining sales, ensuring Awakening wouldn't be the series' last. The series' lore and world-building are equally meticulous. Names, characters, and locations draw heavily from mythologies: Roman, Norse, Celtic, and even Shakespearean literature. The continent of Urcha references Mars, the Roman god of war, while Yugra's name nods to Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. Languages, symbols, and even character dialogue often conceal deeper lore. In Path of Radiance, a font representing ancient speech conveys cryptic messages, subtly tying together story, gameplay, and cultural motifs. Finally, Fire Emblem's hidden and cut content adds another layer of intrigue: unused character stats, illustrations, and icons. Traces of Japan-exclusive releases like Sword of Seals linger within games like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. These artifacts reveal the painstaking effort behind localization, adaptation, and the careful preservation of legacy content, even when it never reaches the player's screen. In the 1980s, official Nintendo consoles occasionally reached China via Hong Kong imports, but their steep prices kept them out of reach for most consumers. Instead, Chinese players often encountered Famicom clones, the most iconic being the Subor system, also called the Red and White Machine. Subor dominated the market, holding an estimated 80% share in the 1990s, and even garnered celebrity endorsements, including from Jackie Chan. Beyond consoles, Subor marketed Little Tyrant computer keyboards, designed to teach children programming while secretly offering built-in Famicom or Super Famicom clones. These devices were a cultural phenomenon, blending education, gaming, and ingenuity. However, parental concerns over gaming addiction triggered government intervention. In June 2000, China passed a law restricting the manufacture and sale of video game consoles, effectively banning their legal presence. This policy pushed many players toward PC gaming, though the black market for unlicensed Famicom games thrived well into the 2000s, offering everything from 8-bit Harry Potter adaptations to complete remakes of PlayStation hits like Final Fantasy VII. Nintendo responded with a creative workaround. Through a joint venture with Chinese-American developer Wei Yen, they launched iQue Limited and released the iQue Player in 2003. This innovative handheld housed all the hardware within the controller, connecting directly to a TV and bypassing the console ban. Priced affordably at roughly $72, it aimed to reach inland markets where traditional consoles were prohibitively expensive. Pre-installed titles included Dr. Mario 64 and demo versions of Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, Wave Race 64, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Additional games were distributed via rewritable memory cards at iQue depots, allowing gamers to expand their libraries for just under $6 per title. The iQue Player also innovated with multiplayer options. Its unique design allowed for up to 3 additional controllers via the iQue Family Package, enabling cooperative play in games like Super Smash Bros. Despite these creative efforts, only 14 games were ever released, with Animal Forest, later Animal Crossing, marking the final title in 2006, just months before the Nintendo Wii launched in North America. Later efforts included iQue versions of the Game Boy Advance, DS, DS Lite, DSi, and even the 3DS XL. Yet these devices struggled due to limited software libraries, high price points, and competition from imported Japanese hardware. Nintendo's official entry into China remained delayed, with the Wii never seeing an authorized release. Eventually, partnerships with Nvidia and Tencent in the late 2010s enabled select Wii titles and the Nintendo Switch to reach Chinese gamers, but the path remained fraught with regulatory and market hurdles. Nintendo's journey in China reflects a mix of ingenuity, adaptation, and perseverance, a testament to the company's willingness to experiment with hardware, distribution, and localization to navigate a complex market. Long before Fire Emblem became a global strategy staple, its development history was riddled with twists, cancellations, and corporate drama. In the late 1990s, a Nintendo 64 installment simply called Fire Emblem 64 was underway, with Shigeru Miyamoto confirming its progress and projecting a release after Mario RPG 2 in 1998. By 2000, however, the game had been quietly canceled, replaced in public listings by Fire Emblem, Maiden of Darkness is at Nintendo's Space World event. While this title ultimately launched as Fire Emblem, The Sword of Seals, speculation persists that assets from the canceled N64 game found their way into later titles like Path of Radiance for the GameCube. The period surrounding these cancellations coincided with broader franchise upheavals. Series creator Shuzu Kaga left Intelligent Systems to form his own company, Tyan, which produced Tear-Ring Saga, a spiritual successor to Fire Emblem. Legal battles with Nintendo followed, resulting in hefty fines for Kaga's team, and further complicating the fate of Fire Emblem 64. Western audiences' first exposure to Fire Emblem was bolstered not just by the series itself, but by appearances of characters in Super Smash Bros. Melee and the growing popularity of Advance Wars, which showcased the appeal of strategy games to Western tastes. Consequently, Nintendo began releasing localized versions of Fire Emblem, starting with the Game Boy Advance adaptation, which was actually the 7th Japanese installment. Localization changes often simplified gameplay. Tutorials like Lin's story from Sword of Seals became mandatory. Difficulty settings were adjusted, and some character growth rates were modified to ease new players into the series' complex systems. As the franchise matured, Intelligent Systems experimented boldly with mechanics and narrative. Fire Emblem Awakening sparked internal debate over the inclusion of casual mode, a feature that removed permanent character death. Developers initially resisted, but declining sales and pressure to meet a sales threshold of 250,000 copies led to its inclusion, alongside new content like downloadable expansions, marriage and children mechanics, and a customizable player avatar. These choices revitalized the series, helping Awakening sell over 1 million copies worldwide and ensuring the continuation of Fire Emblem. Across multiple titles, the series also wove rich cultural and literary references into its world-building. Planets and characters drew inspiration from Roman, Norse, and Celtic mythology, while hidden languages, fonts, and in-game texts referenced classical works like Shakespeare's Hamlet. These layers of lore added depth and continuity, connecting characters and locations in subtle ways that rewarded attentive players and cemented Fire Emblem's reputation as both challenging and intellectually engaging. From canceled projects to global recognition, Fire Emblem's journey exemplifies Nintendo's balancing act between creative ambition, market pressures, and localization strategies, each step shaping the franchise into the strategy powerhouse it is today. The F-Zero series is a tale of speed, ambition, and untapped potential. The original F-Zero was developed in just 15 months, a tight schedule designed to make it a Super Nintendo launch title and to showcase the system's groundbreaking mode, 7 pseudo 3D graphics. Plans for a direct SNES sequel were initially underway, but eventually shelved. However, fans in Japan got a glimpse of what might have been through BSF Zero Grand Prix on the Satellaview, which introduced new tracks, vehicles, and a fresh league, followed by BSF Zero Grand Prix 2, continuing the expansion of the series. The franchise also explored ambitious spin-offs and unreleased projects. On the Nintendo 64, an expansion for F-Zero X allowed players to design custom tracks and vehicles, including enhanced versions of classic machines like the Blue Falcon and Fire Stingray. A Virtual Boy entry, Zero Racers, was planned in 1996 with 3 circuits and 4 vehicles, but it fell victim to the system's commercial failure. Within F-Zero GX, hidden assets reveal unused tracks, models, and even vehicles, suggesting ambitious content was cut during development. One course shown at E3 2005, a recreation of silence from F-Zero X, never made it into the final release. Localization added another layer of transformation, Many vehicles and characters were renamed for Western audiences. Mighty Gazelle became MM Gazelle. Octoman dropped the Ann, and Blood Falcon's Bloodhawk was previously the Hellhawk. Some adjustments, like the renaming of Ni to reflect cultural sensitivity, demonstrate Nintendo's careful navigation of global markets. Connections to other Nintendo franchises run deep. Characters like James McCloud link directly to Star Fox, while Mr. EAD nods to Nintendo's internal development division. Ships from Star Fox appeared in F-Zero tracks, while venues like Aeropolis contained Easter eggs referencing Super Mario RPG. Even Sega franchises left their mark. F-Zero GX, developed by Sega's Amusement Vision, includes visual callbacks to Sonic the Hedgehog and Crazy Taxi. Across canceled projects, expanded content, and inter-franchise references, F-Zero illustrates Nintendo's vision of high-speed gameplay married to creative risk-taking. Even when some ideas never reach players, the legacy of experimentation and innovation continues to define the series. Nintendo's journey in China has been a story of ingenuity meeting regulation. During the 1980s, official Nintendo consoles were prohibitively expensive, leading Chinese gamers to discover the brand through a sea of Famicom knockoffs. One standout was the Subor system, also called the Red and White Machine, which dominated the market with roughly 80% share and earned revenue exceeding $1 billion in the 1990s. Celebrity endorsements, including Jackie Chan, helped cement its popularity, and a series of educational computers called The Little Tyrant integrated Famicom clones with lessons in programming. Yet the government was wary of gaming's influence on youth. A 2000 bill aimed at curbing arcade culture also restricted the sale and manufacture of consoles, pushing many players toward PC gaming. Nintendo responded creatively, exploiting a loophole. In 2003, it launched the iQ Player, a plug-and-play device designed as a handheld system that connected directly to TVs. With all hardware housed in the controller, it bypassed console restrictions and offered titles like Dr. Mario 64 and demos of Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. The iQ Player relied on a rewritable memory card for additional games, each priced around $6, and later enabled online purchases through the iQ Atome service. Multiplayer required the iQ Family Package, which allowed up to 3 extra controllers. Despite this ingenuity, only 14 games were ever released, including Animal Forest, the Chinese version of Animal Crossing. The device never became a runaway success, but today it holds collector appeal and is even used by speedrunners for its faster text scrolling and load times. Nintendo continued experimenting with iQ-branded Game Boy systems and DS variants, but their limited libraries hindered widespread adoption. By the time the iQ 3DS XL arrived, with pre-installed titles like Mario Kart 7 and Super Mario 3D Land, pricing and limited software again constrained success. China's console ban lifted in 2014, but Nintendo opted not to push existing hardware. Instead, the company partnered with Tencent to bring the Switch to China, emphasizing carefully curated content and long-term strategy over immediate sales. Through these hurdles, Nintendo demonstrated a persistent, inventive approach to entering the Chinese market, blending technical creativity with strategic partnerships while navigating regulatory and cultural landscapes. When thinking of Pikmin, you might imagine cute, colorful creatures, but for series creator Shigeru Miyamoto, the game carries a weighty emotional core. He's compared traversing the dangerous landscapes of PNF 404 to a World War II, general sending soldiers across enemy territory to save a single man. Some survive, some perish, and the player must confront the moral consequences of their actions. Miyamoto likens these choices to the ethical questions posed in films like Saving Private Ryan, where sacrifice and duty intertwine. Miyamoto's background with the F-Zero series also influenced Pikmin 3. The emphasis on speed, efficiency, and mastering levels echoes the racing game's spirit. Replay missions, optimize routes, and aim for the best times. Yet, creativity in Pikmin 3 didn't come without limits. About 30% of proposed features were cut during development. online multiplayer, a fourth playable character codenamed D, and even earlier concepts like a captain named Olar were scrapped to keep the game manageable. Miyamoto explained that 4 captains made switching gameplay too complicated, so the team focused on 3. Despite these cuts, Pikmin 3 still offered rich experiences through its single-player campaign and local multiplayer. Years later, some previously unused characters, like Olar and Lou, returned in Pikmin 3 Deluxe, showing that ideas can resurface when the timing and technology align. As for Pikmin 4, fans have been waiting for years. Miyamoto revealed in 2016 that development priorities made it difficult to slot the game into the production schedule, and while he hinted in 2017 that progress was ongoing, the project remains in its early stages. Like its predecessors, sales are a crucial factor. Pikmin 3 barely surpassed 1 million copies, reflecting the series' niche but devoted following. Miyamoto's team continues to experiment and refine, suggesting that Pikmin 4 may emerge slowly but thoughtfully with future hardware or successful re-releases, possibly providing the impetus needed to bring it to life. The origins of Kid Icarus are a story of passion, perseverance, and near-impossible deadlines. Toru Osawa, a young and relatively unknown developer at Nintendo, pitched a new action game rooted in his fascination with Greek mythology. Despite his inexperience, the company approved his concept, giving him a chance few rookies ever receive. Osawa dove headfirst into development, creating the game's design document, sprites, and much of the core gameplay almost entirely on his own. Meanwhile, Yoshio Sakamoto, returning from vacation after finishing Metroid, discovered Osawa working tirelessly to meet the looming December deadline. Realizing the project was too ambitious for a solo effort, Sakamoto brought the Metroid team on board. Their shared use of the same engine made the collaboration a natural fit. The development was grueling. Staff worked around the clock, often sleeping on cardboard boxes, while the building's heating was turned off to conserve energy. Even Osawa's honeymoon was interrupted, with him called back to work on the second day. The game was submitted just 3 days before its release, technically unfinished, yet if it had no major bugs, it was considered complete. When Kid Icarus reached North America, it received additional polish, a staff roll, colored ending backgrounds, and a 5th unique ending, where Pit receives a kiss from Palutena. The Japanese Famicom Disk System version had its own 5th ending and included features like 3 save slots and a microphone-based haggling mechanic, elements absent in the NES version, which relied on passwords. Later re-releases, like the 3D Classics version, restored and enhanced many of these features. Osawa's personal interests heavily influenced the game's world. Greek mythology inspired the setting and enemies, while specific creatures like the Spec-No and Eggplant Wizard drew from his own life and prior Nintendo games. Even Metroid's influence appeared in enemies named KES, short for Koroido, or Metroid Child. The sequel, Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, debuted in 1991 outside Japan, with the series then lying dormant for nearly 2 decades. Attempts to revive it, like Factor 5's 2007 reimagining codenamed Icarus, failed, leaving the franchise in limbo until Kid Icarus. Uprising emerged for the Nintendo 3DS, transforming the angelic hero's story into a dynamic mix of aerial and ground combat. The original F-Zero was conceived and completed in just 15 months, a lightning-fast development pace designed to make it a launch title for the Super Nintendo and showcase the system's Mode 7 pseudo 3D graphics. A direct sequel was initially planned, but the project was canceled. Later, an unfinished version was polished and released exclusively in Japan as BSF Zero Grand Prix, introducing new tracks like Mute City 4 and new vehicles such as the Blue Thunder, Luna Bomber, Green Amazon, and Fire Scorpion. Additional content followed, including BSF Zero Grand Prix 2 and an expansion kit for F-Zero X on the Nintendo 64 disk drive. This kit offered a track editor, a custom vehicle creator, new cups, and a stereo soundtrack, along with upgraded vehicles like the Super Falcon, Super Stingray, and Super Cat. Though the disk drive and its games never launched outside Japan, remnants of these expansions, such as the Super Falcon, exist within regular game files, hinting at Nintendo's original international ambitions. Other unreleased projects included F-Zero Climax on the Game Boy Advance, which featured a track editor, new characters from the F-Zero anime, and an e-reader functionality that Western releases ultimately dropped. A Virtual Boy version, Zero Racers, was planned for 1996 but never saw the light of day, likely due to the system's commercial failure. Hidden assets and cut content abound in the F-Zero series. In F-Zero GX, unused models, test objects, and unreleased tracks like Aor and Stage Zero were discovered within the game's code, while international releases blurred or altered many visuals and replaced Japanese text with alien symbols. Vehicles and characters underwent name changes across regions to align with local sensibilities, including references to Native American culture, or to sync with the English dub of the F-Zero anime. Crossovers and nods to other Nintendo franchises are sprinkled throughout the series. Characters like James McCloud, resembling Fox McCloud's father, and Mr. EAD, echoing Mario with a mustache, and Starman, link the F-Zero universe to Star Fox and the broader Nintendo ecosystem. Vehicles, tracks, and even bosses appear across games, from Super Mario RPG to Star Fox Command, demonstrating the interconnected creativity of Nintendo's design teams. Cameos extend further. References to Sega franchises, such as Sonic the Hedgehog and Crazy Taxi, appear in F-Zero GX, reflecting collaborative efforts with Sega-owned developers. Even details once thought trivial, like flying saucers restoring racers' positions, reveal hidden depths upon closer examination, removing prior misconceptions about their identity. The series' legacy is a blend of high-speed thrills, experimental projects, and a rich tapestry of hidden content, highlighting Nintendo's meticulous attention to world-building and cross-franchise storytelling. In the 1980s, official Nintendo consoles made their way into China, often through Hong Kong, but they were prohibitively expensive for most consumers. Many gamers' first experiences came from Famicom knockoffs, with one of the most famous being the Subor system, nicknamed the Red and White Machine. Subor dominated the market, holding around 80% of China's gaming share during the 1990s and generating over $1 billion in revenue. The company even partnered with Jackie Chan to promote its Little Tyrant educational computer keyboards, which doubled as game consoles. Despite this success, video games faced a backlash. In June 2000, China passed a sweeping law banning the manufacturing and sale of video game consoles, effectively halting the console market. This pushed many players toward PC gaming, though unlicensed Famicom games continued to circulate through the black market. Some of these included full 8-bit remakes of popular titles, like Final Fantasy VII and Harry's Legend. Nintendo adapted creatively. They partnered with Chinese-American developer Wei Yen to launch iQue Limited, producing the iQue Player in 2003. Unlike traditional consoles, the iQue Player embedded all hardware within its controller, connecting directly to TVs and sidestepping legal restrictions. Priced at roughly $72, it aimed to reach inland consumers who couldn't afford imported systems. The iQue Player came preloaded with Dr. Mario 64 and timed demos for classics like Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Users could expand their libraries via rewritable memory cards at kiosks or online through the iQue Atome service, resembling Nintendo's Virtual Console. Multiplayer required the iQue Family Package, which allowed up to 3 additional controllers to join. Despite Nintendo's efforts, only 14 games were released, ranging from Mario Kart 64 to Animal Forest, the precursor to Animal Crossing. While the system didn't achieve runaway success, it became a tool for collectors and speedrunners due to faster scrolling and load times than the original Nintendo 64. Nintendo later released iQue versions of the Game Boy Advance, DS, and 3DS XL, but these had limited libraries, were region-locked, or lacked eShop access. Even as China lifted its console ban in 2014, Nintendo approached the market cautiously, opting to develop new hardware with Tencent rather than simply releasing the Wii U. Partnerships brought titles like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe to Chinese gamers, but Nintendo remained mindful that success in China required government support, appealing content, and consumer value. A slow, steady approach rather than an overnight expansion. Nintendo's history is dotted with ambitious projects that never reached players, and the Fire Emblem series is a prime example. In the late 1990s, Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed that Fire Emblem 64 was in development, originally slated for release after Mario RPG 2 in 1998. By 2000, only a few months before Nintendo's Space World event, another game called Fire Emblem, Maiden of Darkness, appeared on listings. Shortly afterward, Fire Emblem 64 was cancelled. Although the connections between these two projects remain unclear, it's possible that unused assets from Fire Emblem 64 were later recycled for Path of Radiance on the GameCube. Around the same period, series creator Shuzu Kaga left Intelligent Systems to form his own studio, Taian, releasing Emblem Saga, a spiritual successor. However, the game was renamed Tear Ring Saga, leaving certain in-game items unused but still present in the code. Legal battles with Nintendo followed, enforcing the fine for unfair competition, highlighting the challenges of intellectual property in the gaming industry. While Western players often credit Marth's appearance in Super Smash Bros., Melee for Fire Emblem's international popularity, success in other Nintendo franchises also played a role. Advance Wars, with its similar strategy gameplay, demonstrated Western audiences' appetite for tactical games. Consequently, the Game Boy Advance release of Fire Emblem marked the start of a trend. Western versions were slightly simplified compared to their Japanese originals, easing access for new players. Subsequent entries, including Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones, and Path of Radiance, tweaked growth rates, base stats, and difficulty levels. Radiant Dawn maintained these trends, but renamed the difficulty settings in Western releases to prevent criticism of accessibility. Meanwhile, Fire Emblem Awakening sparked debates over the inclusion of casual mode, which removed permanent character death, a core series mechanic. Developers included this mode to safeguard against the risk of the franchise ending due to low sales, ultimately boosting the game to over 1 million copies worldwide. Fire Emblem games have always been rich with hidden details and subtle nods. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, for instance, feature unique design choices in their text and dialogue. Characters like Ranleen and Bolar speak in an ancient tongue, represented with a distinctive font. Though it looks intricate, the text is fully in English, allowing players to understand the story while still feeling the weight of a lost, mystical language. Some of these textual quirks even appear in menu backgrounds, subtly hinting at deeper lore. One message translates to, "Doubt that the stars are fire, doubt that the sun does not move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love." A direct homage to Hamlet's poetic expressions of devotion. The games also contain remnants from previous titles, including Super Nintendo and GBA icons embedded in the GameCube-era Path of Radiance. While the game is not directly connected to earlier titles, these artifacts act as placeholders, preserving the series' visual legacy. Path of Radiance also had link functionality to Fire Emblem, the Sword of Seals, similar to earlier GBA games, though this was disabled in Western releases due to localization issues. Character artwork from the earlier titles remains hidden in the game's code, accessible only through cheats, alongside stats for characters who never appeared in the final game, like Heather, playable in Radiant Dawn. Fire Emblem's world-building draws extensively from mythology and geography. The continent of Urcha, for example, is named after Mars, the Roman god of war, while the continent of Yugra incorporates Norse and Celtic elements. Even the names of continents reference mythic structures. Yugra evokes Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. These mythological layers enrich the series, creating a tapestry that rewards players who explore its hidden references. During the development of Fire Emblem Awakening, the team considered an even bolder concept, setting the story on Mars. This idea was ultimately rejected, likely to maintain the series' tradition of mythologically inspired worlds. The presence of Roman and Norse references in prior games anchored the narrative in recognizable historical and mythic contexts. Meanwhile, Marth's enduring presence in the Super Smash Bros. Series helped solidify his Western identity, ensuring continuity for international fans. The series' careful blending of history, mythology, and hidden content underscores its depth, rewarding both casual players and devoted lore hunters alike. The Fire Emblem series hasn't just dazzled with its strategy and story. Its journey from Japan to the West has been full of adaptation and experimentation. From the early days, the localization process involved careful adjustments, particularly in difficulty and accessibility. The first Western release of Fire Emblem, The Sword of Seals, linked to Blazing Sword in Japan, required mandatory tutorial sequences and story segments that were optional in Japan, while enemy stats were subtly lowered to ease players into the game. Subsequent releases, like the Sacred Stones, increased character growth rates and base stats to balance the challenge for Western audiences. Path of Radiance introduced another shift. While retaining core difficulty, the infamous Maniac mode of earlier games was removed in Western versions, replaced with an easy setting below the standard difficulty. By contrast, Radiant Dawn maintained the full spectrum of challenge but renamed modes as easy, normal, and hard, creating a smoother bridge for international players. These adjustments reflected a broader trend. Fire Emblem was learning how to respect its roots while expanding its appeal beyond Japan. The evolution continued with Fire Emblem Awakening, which sparked debates within Intelligent Systems over the inclusion of casual mode, a feature that eliminates permanent character death. Some developers feared it would dilute the series' strategic tension, yet its inclusion ultimately saved the franchise. Sales pressures were intense. Without hitting at least 250,000 units sold, Awakening might have marked the end of the series. To safeguard success, developers added numerous features: downloadable content, marriage and children mechanics, a player avatar, and the controversial casual mode, blending accessibility with classic Fire Emblem depth. The gamble paid off. Awakening sold over 1 million copies worldwide, revitalizing the franchise and proving that innovation, when balanced with tradition, could win over both new and veteran players. Localization also extended to language, symbols, and fonts. Ancient scripts in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn were retained in design but translated fully into English to ensure accessibility. Even background elements like the enigmatic text and menus were preserved to maintain a sense of continuity and immersion. Across these titles, Fire Emblem demonstrates a delicate balance between preserving legacy content, managing cultural translation, and evolving gameplay systems to resonate with an international audience. Beneath the tactical battles and character dramas, Fire Emblem has always been steeped in mythology, history, and carefully crafted symbolism. The series' worlds are more than backdrops. They're layered with references that enrich every corner. In Path of Radiance, for example, characters like Ron, Leanne, and Bolu communicate in a carefully constructed ancient tongue, represented through unique fonts. Though visually intricate, the dialogue is fully translated into English, striking a balance between aesthetic intrigue and accessibility. Even menu elements contain hidden messages, often nodding to past entries or classical literature, including quotes inspired by Shakespeare. Mythology isn't just decorative, it's woven into characters, geography, and plot. The continent of Urcha draws from Roman myths, Mars-inspired characters and names appearing throughout the story, while Yugra, the setting of genealogy of the Holy War, integrates Norse and Celtic influences. Virtually every character and location carries symbolic weight, from Yggdrasil-derived place names to characters echoing legendary figures. Even gameplay elements and hidden content pay homage to the series' lineage. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn preserve unused character stats, illustrations, and icons from earlier Fire Emblem titles, creating layers of lore and design that hint at unrealized possibilities or scrapped ideas. From subtle nods to forgotten mechanics to full-blown Easter eggs, the series thrives on embedding secrets for attentive fans. Fire Emblem isn't just about strategy. It's a living archive of Nintendo's creativity, connecting mythology, history, and hidden narrative threads to give each game a unique depth that rewards exploration and curiosity. Fire Emblem's journey to becoming a global strategy icon wasn't without its setbacks. Some projects never reached the light of day, while others transformed significantly before release. Take Fire Emblem 64, initially in development for the Nintendo 64-disc drive. Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed the game was actively progressing in 1998, likely slated for release after Mario RPG 2. Yet, by the time Nintendo Space World rolled around in 2000, the project had vanished from public view. Only months later, a game titled Fire Emblem, Maiden of Darkness appeared on listings. Its connection to the cancelled Fire Emblem 64 remains a topic of speculation. The story gets even more tangled with Intelligent Systems' internal shakeups. Series creator Shuzu Kaga left to form his own company, Taion, producing Tearring Saga, initially designed as a spiritual successor to Fire Emblem. Legal battles followed as Nintendo pursued claims of unfair competition, resulting in hefty fines and leaving fans to wonder how much of the cancelled material influenced later entries. The westward expansion of Fire Emblem also played a pivotal role in shaping the series. Many mechanics and story adjustments were made to suit Western tastes, beginning with the Game Boy Advance release of Fire Emblem. Boss stats were lowered, and tutorial-linked content was mandatory, small changes that helped the series gain traction outside Japan. By the time Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn arrived on the GameCube, Intelligent Systems was balancing fan expectations with global accessibility, tweaking difficulties, hiding unused assets, and even modifying language fonts to maintain both mystique and clarity. Through cancellations, legal hurdles, and thoughtful localization, Fire Emblem evolved not just as a game series, but as a testament to perseverance, adaptation, and Nintendo's intricate development philosophy. Every release carries the echoes of what might have been, while also paving the way for what's next. Fire Emblem has always drawn heavily from myth, history, and literature to craft its rich, immersive worlds. Each continent, each character, carries echoes of ancient stories. Take the continent of Urcha, where many names and themes nod to Roman mythology. Mars, the god of war, gives his name to one of the series' central characters. Meanwhile, Yugra, the setting of genealogy of the Holy War, is steeped in Norse and Celtic lore, borrowing its name from Yggdrasil, the legendary world tree. The series' dedication to hidden content and player discovery is equally impressive. In Path of Radiance, clever use of legacy assets from earlier games can be uncovered by those digging into the code. Icons from genealogy of the Holy War and the Sword of Seals linger within the GameCube release, remnants of past chapters in the franchise. Certain characters, like Heather, remain present in data, but never make it into the playable roster, hinting at stories left untold. Even languages in the game carry hidden complexity. Characters like Ron, Leanne, and Bolu speak in an ancient tongue represented by unique fonts, preserving a sense of cultural depth while ensuring translation remains accessible. Fire Emblem also delights in weaving literary allusions into gameplay. Text found in menus and backgrounds includes lines inspired by Shakespeare's Hamlet, such as the enigmatic, "Doubt that the stars are fire, doubt that the sun does not move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love." These subtle touches reward players who look beyond the surface, embedding layers of story, history, and lore throughout every corner of the game world. Through its blend of mythology, literary homage, and hidden content, Fire Emblem builds a tapestry that feels alive, deep, and endlessly discoverable. Every character design, every font choice, and every unused asset tells a story of careful craftsmanship and narrative ambition. Fire Emblem's path to Western audiences was neither simple nor guaranteed. While the franchise thrived in Japan, its expansion overseas relied on a mix of strategic localization, market timing, and a bit of serendipity. The series first reached Western players on the Game Boy Advance with Fire Emblem, a title that was actually the 7th in the Japanese sequence. This release set a precedent. Western versions often saw tweaks to balance difficult, ensure accessibility, and preserved the game's tactical charm for new audiences. Adjustments were subtle but significant. Earlier games like Blazing Sword allowed linked gameplay with their predecessors in Japan, letting players skip tutorial sequences if they owned both titles. Western releases, however, lacked these features, requiring newcomers to navigate every challenge. Similarly, difficulty scaling was carefully altered. Enemy stats were softened, and tutorials made more explicit. By the Sacred Stones, some character growth rates were boosted, smoothing progression for players unaccustomed to Fire Emblem's notoriously unforgiving mechanics. Some elements sparked debate within the series' development teams. Fire Emblem Awakening, for example, introduced casual mode, which removed permanent character death, a controversial shift for a franchise celebrated for its stakes and consequences. The inclusion of this mode came from a pragmatic need to secure the series' future, ensuring that Awakening would sell enough copies to justify continuing the franchise. Additional features, such as marriage mechanics, player avatars, and downloadable content, were designed to appeal to both longtime fans and newcomers, blending the familiar tactical depth with more modern gaming conveniences. Localization also involved thoughtful cultural adaptation. Character names were sometimes modified to resonate better with Western audiences or align with previous media representations. Meanwhile, the series' broader appeal in the West was helped by indirect exposure. Appearances in Super Smash Bros. Melee showcased characters like Marth, building recognition and demand that translated into Western releases. Strategic timing, careful difficulty adjustments, and the balancing act of maintaining the series' signature identity ultimately allowed Fire Emblem to successfully plant its roots outside Japan, opening the door to the global phenomenon the franchise enjoys today. Beneath its tactical battles and character-driven stories, Fire Emblem is a treasure trove of mythology, history, and hidden details. The series' worlds are steeped in rich lore. Characters, places, and even entire continents often draw from real-world myths. The continent of Urcha, for instance, is named after Mars, the Roman god of war, while Yugra, a setting for genealogy of the Holy War, pulls heavily from Norse and Celtic mythology. Its very name echoes Yggdrasil, the legendary world tree of Norse myth, signaling the game's deep-rooted connection to ancient storytelling. Developers took care to embed references that reward attentive players. Even within localized Western releases, cryptic fonts and background elements carry meaning. In Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, certain dialogues appear in an ancient tongue, represented by a unique English font, designed to hint at the culture and history of the characters while remaining fully translatable. These textual flourishes often conceal literary nods, such as quotes inspired by Shakespeare, weaving a layer of sophistication into the game's narrative fabric. Fire Emblem also hides a wealth of cut or unused content that sparks curiosity among fans. Icons and assets from previous Super Nintendo and GBA titles, though unused, still reside in the game data of Path of Radiance, suggesting careful attention to continuity, and perhaps plans that were scaled back for practical reasons. Characters like Heather, present in the data but not playable, point to intriguing what-ifs, hinting at storylines and gameplay elements that never reach the final release. Additionally, features allowing linkage to earlier games, though disabled in Western versions, demonstrate the series' ambitious design, aimed at rewarding longtime fans with interwoven narratives. This intricate layering of myth, unused content, and hidden references reflects a design philosophy that celebrates depth and player curiosity. Fire Emblem isn't just a strategy series. It's a living archive of cultural nods, storytelling experimentation, and meticulous attention to world building, an experience that invites players to look beyond the battlefield and explore the subtle echoes of history, literature, and legend embedded within every corner of its worlds. The journey of Fire Emblem has often been as strategic and demanding as its gameplay. Throughout its history, the series has faced numerous development hurdles, particularly when balancing the expectations of longtime fans with the realities of modern gaming markets. Fire Emblem Awakening exemplifies this tension. the developers debated fiercely over whether to include casual mode, which removes permanent character death, a hallmark of the series. Opinions were split, with some arguing that removing this mechanic diluted the essence of Fire Emblem, while others saw it as a necessary evolution to reach a broader audience. Ultimately, casual mode became part of the package, ensuring the survival of the series after declining sales threatened its continuation. By the early 2000s, Fire Emblem faced an uncertain future. Sales were declining, and internal discussions within Nintendo and Intelligent Systems hinted that one more commercial failure could end the series entirely. That make-or-break moment arrived with Fire Emblem Awakening. Developers poured everything into it, refining tactical combat, expanding social elements, and introducing the now iconic casual mode that allowed fallen allies to return in later battles. While this decision sparked fierce debate among series veterans, it opened the doors for a new generation of fans. Awakening became both a critical and commercial success, revitalizing the franchise and redefining its identity for modern players. Its success demonstrated that innovation and accessibility didn't have to come at the expense of strategy or story. From that point on, every subsequent title, from Fates to Three Houses, would build upon the foundation Awakening set: deep tactical systems enriched by character relationships, moral choices, and cinematic storytelling. Today, Fire Emblem stands as one of Nintendo's most respected and versatile series, a franchise that not only survived near extinction, but transformed itself into a cornerstone of modern strategy gaming. Its journey from niche tactical experiment to global phenomenon is proof that adaptation, when done with care and passion, can preserve a legacy while charting a bold new path forward. When you look across the history of Fire Emblem, it's easy to see it as a timeline of evolving graphics, mechanics, and market shifts. But at its core, the series has always been about something far more human: the weight of loss, the value of loyalty, and the quiet strength found in unity. Whether it's a lone tactician guiding troops through impossible odds, or a player restarting a map just to save a single unit, Fire Emblem's heart beats within those moments of care and consequence. It's a reminder that strategy games don't just test your mind, they test your empathy. Every decision is a reflection of how much you're willing to risk for those you fight beside. From its humble beginnings on the Famicom to its renaissance with Awakening and beyond, Fire Emblem continues to evolve without ever losing sight of its soul. In the end, that's what makes it timeless. Not just the battles or the victories, but the stories of courage, sacrifice, and connection that stay with you long after the final turn.